A few introductions today. I am Edgar Torres, and I will be your host today. I am part of the CMCP team, and we are welcoming you today to be able to provide you information with regards to the North County CMCP, as well as to garner your feedback this evening. There will be multiple opportunities to be able to provide your feedback, as well as provide you how to be able to contact the team and provide SANDAG more feedback in the future. At this time, I'd like to hand it over to Carlos, our interpreter, to be able to provide additional information with regards to the interpretation.
Good afternoon, and I am sorry for that long pause. Thank you for the introduction. Muy buenas tardes. Como se mencionó, vamos a contar con interpretación simultánea para esta reunión. Para hacer uso del servicio, solo tiene que desplazarse a la parte inferior de su pantalla en Zoom, donde aparecen los controles, y hacer clic en el icono de interpretación. Parece un globo terráqueo y seleccionar español o Spanish. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom en celular, tableta, etcétera, primero presione los puntos suspensivos, luego interpretación y luego el idioma. Si no desea, escuchar el audio original en inglés en el fondo, por favor seleccione Mute Original Audio o silenciar audio original. Good afternoon once again. We do have interpretation available, as has been noted. In order to use the service, in the event that there are any Spanish-speaking comments, please scroll down to the bottom of your Zoom screen where the meeting controls are. Then click on the interpretation icon. It looks like a little world. And then select English as your language. If you are joining through a Zoom mobile app on a cell phone, tablet, and so on, please press the ellipsis first, the 3 dots, then interpretation, and then choose your language. And finally, click on Mute Original Audio to not hear the original Spanish low in the background. Gracias, and thank you.
For today's meeting, this meeting will be recorded. Microphones will be muted during the presentation. You may share comments and ask questions via the Q&A feature, and there will be opportunities to ask questions. The opportunities to provide questions will be provided throughout the presentation and through the Q&A discussion. At this time, I'd like to introduce the Honorable Paul McNamara, Mayor of the City of Escondido and SANDAG Board Member.
Thank you, Edgar, and welcome everyone to the first public meeting for the North County Comprehensive Multimodal Corridor Plan. I want to take a moment to thank you all for joining us tonight as we discuss our goals for the North County Corridor. This corridor is unique. It involves many communities, roadways, recreational trails, and bike and pedestrian facilities. The goal of this corridor plan is to enhance the transportation systems throughout the area and preserve the region's characteristics. This is why your feedback is so vital to the development of this plan. Our goal is to improve this corridor for the community. So I encourage you all to voice your opinions on the transportation opportunities we discussed tonight and share them with your neighbors and colleagues. We also invite you to learn more about why transportation planning is needed to create a cleaner, faster, and fairer transportation system for San Diego County. These comprehensive multimodal corridor plans are in alignment with San Diego Forward. That's the draft 2021 regional plan. These transportation plans answer questions like, what do we want our region to look like in 2050 and beyond? How will we get around? The work we do at SANDAG, like the 2021 regional plan and comprehensive multimodal corridor plans, tackles these questions and provides a blueprint for a sustainable future for the San Diego region. Thank you again to you all for joining us tonight. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Edgar.
Thank you very much, Mayor McNamara. And for those attending tonight, we have our first feedback or first poll. We'd like to know more about you. What is your connection to the study area? And please check all that can apply. Live, work, or own a business in the North County. Visit for shopping or entertainment. attend school, visit recreational areas, or other. And if it's other, please post in the Q&A. We'll give it a few more moments here. We're getting the responses. All right. So we have a large percentage that work and live within the North County study area. Visit and with regards to recreational areas, we've heard that quite a bit in our listening tour, which you'll hear more. Shopping. So we've got a strong connection to the study area with those attending tonight. Our follow-up question is, how did you hear about this workshop? And please check all that apply. The SANDAG website, virtual engagement hub or social media, SANDAG's e-blast, other electric news source, newspaper advertisements, community group organization, word of mouth from friends. And if you select other, please post in the Q&A. Excellent, we're getting responses in. A few more moments here. All right, let's go ahead and post those. So the responses are fairly evenly distributed. So many of you heard it from different sources, and we're grateful that we are able to reach you and be able to have us join us this evening. Now let's provide an overview of this evening's meeting. We will start with Brian Lane providing a 2021 regional plan overview, followed by Alan Kossop providing a CMCP overview and process. Then Kareem Scarlett will provide the North County corridor overview, providing understanding of what's within the corridor, employment, population. Then we'll proceed with providing you more information on SANDAG's virtual engagement hub for the comprehensive multimodal corridor plans. Subsequent to that will be North County CMCP framework, and then our opportunity for Q&A discussion and next steps. And with that, I will hand it off to Brian Lane.
Thanks, Edgar. So I'm going to quickly talk a little bit about SANDAG's Regional Transportation Plan, referred to as the 2021 Regional Plan. The draft of this has been recently released and is open for public comments. In a little bit, Alan will tell you more about the difference between the regional plan and this CMCP work. So on the next slide, I'm going to show you how we looked at the data on where people live and work and how they travel around the region. The map on the left shows where people live in the region. The darker the color, the more people that live in that area. The map on the right shows the areas where we have highest concentration of jobs in the region, and we call those employment centers. Work trips are not the only trips that people need to make, so we also use data to understand how and where connections are being made for other types of trips. And all this data helped us identify the right transportation solutions to meet the different needs of communities across the region. On the next slide, we show the issues we face are reflected in the three biggest challenges we need to overcome as a region. We must adopt a regional plan that addresses congestion, a plan that addresses social equity in a meaningful way, providing opportunities for all to benefit from higher education, access to quality jobs and healthcare, building a system that brings communities together, not separating them. Also, a plan that meets our state and federal mandates. We have to do this if we want to continue to receive state and federal funding to support our existing and future transportation system. So we envision a plan that has 5 big moves. Complete corridors or roadways that accommodate all modes of transportation with technology to manage how they are used. Transit Leap is fast and frequent transit service that benefits from technology that makes it more reliable and convenient. Flexible fleet services are the full spectrum of app-enabled mobility services for all different types of trips, from bikes and scooters to ride sharing. Mobility hubs are communities where all of the modes of transportation come together seamlessly, and it's safe and easy to get around without a car. And at the heart of the 5 Big Moves is the NextOS platform, which uses data and technology to manage the transportation system and services. The regional plan brings the 5 Big Moves together to create a complete transportation system. And on this map, I'll show you how the 5 Big Moves can be layered and makes our plan an integrated system. So what does this reimagined transportation system look like? The complete corridors provides a fully connected system of managed lanes, which are similar to what we have on Interstate 15 today. These lanes would have options for people to use transit, rideshare, or pay a fee to use them when driving alone. Our rural corridors provide access and connectivity for rural towns and lands to the interstate system. These roadways are improved with a focus on safety through shoulder widening, curve straightening, and technology features, such as active transportation and demand management and smart intersections. Next, the commuter rail system. Imagine fast trains traveling below ground in tunnels or above ground so they can provide quick connections to jobs and popular destinations. I'm sure many of you have experienced transportation like this in other parts of the country or the world. This would be truly amazing for our region. Next, we have our light rail system. This includes the trolley and the sprinter, and we envision more frequent trains and longer hours of service. Next generation rapid buses would make use of the managed lanes as a fast, convenient transit option in many communities. And then finally, we have mobility hubs. These are the areas where people most live and work today, and where we will see more people and jobs in the future. In these areas, it's easy to get around without a car. So with that, I'll hand it over to Alan, and we'll start diving into the CMCP work.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Alan Kossip with Caltrans. Wanted to spend a little bit of time, and as Brian said today, next slide. As Brian said, the RTP lays out the big picture vision for the county. And these studies really get into a sub-region, into a smaller locale, and figure out how do we apply those principles that are developed in the RTP, the 5 Big Moves, and how do we apply them here in this area, because each area is different, right? And so what may work in Chula Vista may not work in San Marcos. And so we really need these CMCPs to get into that detail. And as we do that, so what this slide represents is how do we go about that thinking? What do we take into consideration? So, you know, I think the subregion as a whole has a good foundation for transportation. A lot works well. But on the other hand, you know, all of us experience challenges and problems moving around the subregion. And that can look in several different ways, right? It can be waiting a long time to get to the next sprinter ride, or it can be feeling very unsafe moving around the area in a bike, or it can be waiting behind signals in cities. So there's many different manifestations of, you know, a transportation system that's not working perfectly. It could be a lot better. And so, you know, the CMCPs are about essentially building a better mousetrap, right? Building on the foundation that we have now and looking forward, as the mayor said, into 2050. And what do we want that system to be like in 2050? And in doing so, a couple things we need to consider. A lot's going to change between now and 2050. Land use will continue to change. More folks will move to the area. So where are those people moving? Who's moving? What are their transportation needs? Where are they going to work? So not only do we need to consider the existing conditions, but we need to consider how this area is going to change from a demographics and a population perspective, but also from a technology perspective, right? And that one is really difficult, right? We know a lot of amazing opportunities are heading our way. Because we can see what has happened in transportation just in the last 5 or 10 years. We can only imagine what it's going to be like in the next 20 or 30 years. So a lot of things that we need to plan for. Sometimes that's difficult in knowing exactly when and where they're going to occur and how they're going to occur, but that's the important part of doing this transportation planning. And the third thing that we need to consider when developing the plan is this public policy, the parameters. And what are we talking about there? I mean, a simple one is available funding. There are lots of great ideas in fixing transportation, but there's a limited amount of funds. So how do we pick the best improvements and the most efficient? But also there are, public policy and legislative requirements, such as reduction of vehicle miles traveled and addressing greenhouse gases. And so these three areas will be addressed and really sort of shape the plan that we're looking at. Next slide. This next slide really kind of speaks to change and the challenge of transportation planning. And it really looks at what these lines are the volumes of people moving around, essentially San Diego during the COVID crisis. And as you can see, in April of 2020, volumes and travel reduced upwards of 60% in some areas. And, at that time, I think a lot of us were thinking, well, how is it going to return? Will people continue to telecommute? Is this truly a disruptive game changer in transportation will forever be changed? And interestingly enough, as we move, 16, 18 months later, what we've seen is that the demand has sort of returned to pre-COVID levels, which I don't think is a huge surprise. If you're moving around the region, you certainly see that. But we're seeing different patterns. People are traveling differently in ways that maybe we wouldn't have anticipated. And so certainly COVID has changed a lot, but it's hard to know as we look forward, how is this permanent? Are these permanent changes? Are these, are people going to telecommute the same way for the forever, essentially? How do home prices change as we move forward? How does the ability for people to telecommute change where they live? How is goods movement changed? So many questions still unanswered, and most of us think it'll be several years before we truly understand how the patterns settle down. And what that speaks to, and the importance of transportation planning, is that it really is a continuous effort, right? We don't do these plans and sort of walk away and implement over 20 years. We're constantly reevaluating to see how the assumptions that we've made are playing out and making adjustments as we go. So in some ways, I think there's comfort to be had in that. Next slide. And so now we have a short little video that provides maybe a little more background on what a CMCP is and how they're developed. Next slide.
You may be wondering, what exactly is a comprehensive multimodal corridor plan, and why should such a plan matter to you? CMCPs align with the 2021 Regional Plan and tie into state and regional transportation goals. These are data-driven plans that intend to reduce congestion, generate transportation alternatives, preserve the character of communities, and create opportunities for enhancement projects. A CMCP evaluates all travel modes and transportation facilities in a defined corridor: highways and freeways, parallel and connecting roadways, transit options, pathways, and bikeways. There are 5 corridor plans being created: South Bay to Sorrento, Coast Canyons and Trails, San Vicente, Central Mobility Hub and Connections, and North County. You may be wondering,
and so, one of the things that folks ask is sort of what's new about this process as opposed to years past. And I think there's a huge difference. In years past, essentially modes such as freeway or transit, bicycles, they were planned sort of individually by separate agencies. And we really didn't think about it as a system. We were really looking at improvements on each element of the system. And the CMCPs are really the first time where we're bringing all the agencies into a multi-agency effort and looking at each other's plans and trying to put them together in a system. And that's really important because obviously you as the customer, it's a door-to-door experience for you, right? You're trying to get from your house to your job, or from your house to shopping, from house to hospital, or vice versa. And so, there are many elements of that trip. And so we really need to be planning around the trip, not so much the element. And that really is what we're doing here in the CMCP. And the good news is all of these agencies do have these plans, these elements, and now it's a question of bringing them together and knitting them together into this system and then prioritizing it as a system. So we bring our goals, we bring our plans, we look at your needs as a corridor, and what will the outcome be of this plan is a portfolio of prioritized projects in all the modes. But the idea is that they will work as a system. Next slide. The other good news is lots of work has already been done that really is the formative foundational elements of what we're doing now over the next. We've been working on it for the last 3 or 4 months. We'll be wrapping up by the end of the year. And you know, we're working as the foundation of what's already been done, as I said, and Brian talked about the RTP and the 5 big moves. That's a huge input into this plan. At a local level, right, the cities have done much work over the years in terms of their general plans and their sustainability plans and their safety, addressing safety at a local level. And next slide. And Caltrans has done the same thing. And so now you see sort of a state system, a regional system, and a local system. And so how do you knit these three things together into a coordinated system that meets our objectives? And this slide really speaks to the state's goals, but they're in total alignment with what you see at San Diego with the cities. These are all themes that we're all working on. So, you know, that's a major plus as well. It gives us a great foundation. Safety, reducing climate change, equity, improving accessibility. Can I get from point A to point B? How do I make that connection? And still protecting the environment and a vibrant economy and a vibrant community. Those are really all important things for us. So that's really gives us the parameters, the values, if you would, of us, of our plan. Next slide. And the video sort of touched on this, but how do we do this? So the first thing we need to do is really understand what are the corridor mobility needs? And as I said, you know, this corridor is different from every other corridor. Where what we call origins and destinations. Where do most people work in this corridor? Where are they trying to go? Where are a majority of their non-work trips going? If you're coming to Cal State San Marcos, where are you coming from? Where are the predominant users? Brian showed those economic engines down there in Carlsbad. Where are their employers coming from? And really, we need to understand that first. That's the blue box, because that helps us understand where we should tailor our investments. Box 2 is once we know where people are coming from and what facilities they're using, trying to understand what facilities work well for us already and what facilities are you know, have some performance problems. And so that's kind of where we're right now, is somewhere between box 2 and box 3. Box 3 is, you know, Brian talked about 5 big moves, and those really are our menu of strategies that now we can layer once we understand what's not working well. And today's a big important step in that, because you provide us a lot of feedback, right? You're the boots on the ground that tell us this doesn't work. I mean, we have our opinions on what works and what doesn't work, but you're clearly a lot closer to it. So we really rely on you to let us to provide that input. And then in box 3, that's where we provide the solutions, and we then prioritize those solutions so that at the end of the study, by the end of the year, we'll have this implementation blueprint, and it really will be it'll be the projects, the cost of the projects, and then prioritize sort of in a short-term, medium, long-term approach. And that'll be the final product of this effort. And with that, I'm going to segue to Kareem Scarlett. He's the project, one of the 2 project managers, and Kareem will discuss the characteristics of the corridor. Kareem?
Thank you, Alan, and good evening, everyone. As Alan said, I will be giving an overview of the North County CMCP. So up on the screen is the study area for the North County CMCP. This area is comprised of the cities of Oceanside, Carlsbad, Vista, San Marcos, Escondido, and parts of the unincorporated areas of San Diego County. We considered numerous factors when developing the study limits, factors such as location of activity and employment centers, future development areas, city limits, and existing travel patterns within the area. As part of our efforts to better understand the challenges and the needs of the study area, the project team has been interacting with businesses, city staff, and various communities in this subregion to gather input and feedback for this study. So this slide here presents the study area's estimates for population, jobs, housing units, senior population, low-income households, and people of color. The number represents the estimates for the study area, while the percentages shown show how the study area does in terms of the San Diego region. For example, the study area population is about 661,000 residents, which represents about 20% or 1/5 of the San Diego region. There are several employment centers identified in the North County study area. This exhibit identifies those locations, the type of employment centers, as well as the estimated number of jobs in each one of them. These employment centers are major attractors for why people travel to and within the study area. So these three maps are showing the concentration of people of color, low income, and senior populations in the North County area. As the project evaluates existing conditions and develops solutions, we are keeping in mind where these population groups reside and how they interact with the transportation system to ensure we are addressing the mobility needs for these groups with our proposed solutions. So when we began this study, we essentially went on a listening tour to understand the transportation challenges in the study area. We met with the cities, we met with NCTD, the county, CBOs, as well as business and educational stakeholders. We've also held a public survey, which has garnered over 1,000 participants. And we've developed a social pinpoint website, which has an interactive map that allows folks to leave comments or suggestions at a particular location. All of this was done in order to get a sense of the challenges and opportunities within the study area. And the following is a result of those efforts. Beginning with the challenges. We've heard that, congestion in the area and cut-through traffic are certain challenges that are being experienced, as well as topography, as well as gaps in the bike and sidewalk network, limited competitive transit options, transit convenience and reliability, as well as accessibility. And we've also heard that there are potential opportunities to address mobility needs and issues with future growth areas and development, connecting major employment and activity centers, connecting adjacent communities, general plan updates, top routes and paths and major arterials, improving safety, and the implementation of emerging technology. So as an example of how challenges can be turned into opportunities, the following is at the SR-78 and Barham Drive in San Marcos. As you can see, this is a constrained environment and with limited access for pedestrian and cyclists. This location is in close proximity to Cal State San Marcos and the Inland Rail Trail. This challenge presents an opportunity for us to provide an easier and more inviting transportation connection between neighborhoods and destinations.
And with that, we go to our next poll question related to challenges and opportunities. For today, what is the most important to you for improving transportation in North County? And please select up to 3 that apply. Expand travel options competitive to driving a car. Provide more travel options for short trips, in this case, less than 5 miles. Enhance, maintain local community character. Improve overall travel safety. Improve the environment and air quality. Decrease congestion. Better connection to jobs and school. Prepare for the future technology. And other. And if you select other, please enter in the Q&A. Excellent. We're getting responses coming in. All right, a few more seconds here. Here we go. So for this evening, we're seeing that expand travel options competitive to driving a car. It got the most responses. And then from there, decrease congestion, along with better connections to jobs and schools. We do have one other, and we'll see if there's another input there. So we'll provide that during the Q&A. With regards to our, with this, I'll hand it back to Kareem.
Thank you, Edgar. From the listening tour and outreach that we've held to date, we are looking at a wide range of mobility opportunities and solutions to help move people to where they need to go. Some of these solutions we are looking at include local and rapid bus service and amenities, commuter and intercity rail improvements, pedestrian and bikeway facilities, highway and freeway improvements, and micromobility options such as bike share, e-bikes, and scooters.
Our next poll. So I apologize for the previous poll. There was allowing only 1 instead of choosing up to 3. We will try that again, that question subsequently, as we correct that. For this polling question, which types of services can suit your travel? On-demand neighborhood shuttles, on-demand rideshare services, rideshare and carpool matching, managed highway lanes, smart intersections and arterials, more frequent transit service, express bus service, bike share and e-bikes services. Please note that e-bikes are electric bikes that have pedal assist for those riding the bicycle. Work from home resources and other. And if you choose other, please enter in the other. It appears that it's only allowing 1 in this case. Again, so if you could be mindful that it is only allowing you to choose 1, and we may correct that. In this case, we're relaunching the poll. I apologize. We are waiting for that poll to come through under improving. Give us 1 moment while we correct that. For the time being, oh, there we go. Now it's, so we will go back. So suit your travel needs. Now we're going to be able to allow multiple choice. Please select all that apply, and I will repeat the responses. On-demand neighborhood shuttles, on-demand rideshare service, rideshare and carpool matching, managed highway lanes, smart intersections and arterials, more frequent transit service, express bus services, bike share and e-bike or electric bike share service, and work from home resources, and finally other, and please enter in the Q&A. We'll allow time to be able to provide multiple responses. It looks like we are ready to present. Here we go. So a couple of responses that rise up is the more frequent transit service, with 72% of you participating as stating that. And then we have a reasonable distribution between neighborhood shuttles, express bus services, bike share, e-bike, and work from home resources. We also had three other that I believe will be posted in there. And so we will share some of those as well during the Q&A discussion. All right, Kareem, and we'll continue with values.
Thank you. Based on the outreach performed and conversations with various stakeholders and community groups, we've developed a set of values that will help guide the North County CMCP and the kinds of mobility solutions and strategies we propose. Beginning with it being safe. Improve the safety for all transportation modes for all users. Next. Sustainable. Reduce vehicle miles traveled, improve mobility, and lower transportation costs by providing options that encourage residents to travel by transit, biking, or walking while protecting the environment. Improve quality of life. Improve quality of life for all communities and users of the corridor while preserving the environment. Customer-based solutions. Connect with the users of the corridor to develop mobility options that work for their needs. Equity and social justice. Provide safe, affordable access to the corridor for all users. And last, promote community vitality. Integrate transportation investments with land use to promote and enhance communities along the corridor, preparing these communities for the future. And we've also developed a set of goals we would like the project to achieve. Similarly to values, the goals are based off of outreach with various stakeholders and community groups. The goals proposed for the North County CMCP include providing an improved experience for all, shifting toward cleaner, transformative transportation, providing choices tailored to needs, building a foundation for future possibilities, and improving community connections.
We'd like your feedback with regards to values and goals here. So first with values, how well do these values address your priorities with regards to North County travel? Does it address it well? Mostly addresses, somewhat addresses, minimally addresses, or does not address? Give it a few moments. All right, let's go ahead and post. So we have the majority saying that it addresses well or mostly addresses, and there are some where it doesn't as much. So we'll have that as part of the Q&A discussion as well. Our next polling question, how well do the goals address your priorities? In this case, same scale, addresses well to does not address. And a reminder, the goals are provide an improved experience for all, shift towards cleaner transportation, transformative transportation, provide choices tailored to needs, build a foundation for future possibilities, and improve community connections. Give it a few more moments here. And here there is a slightly more distribution with regards to mostly address and address as well. So we look forward to your comments and questions as part of the Q&A with regards to the goals. With that, we will transition to our virtual engagement hub. And SANDAG has put together a social pinpoint site. In this case, there are sites specifically for the SANDAG CMCPs, or the Comprehensive Corridor Multimodal Corridor Plans. And we invite you to visit the website. It will be posted in the chat here shortly in terms of the URL. If you have your phone and camera ready, you can turn that camera on and scan the QR code, and it'll take you to the SANDAG website. A plug there is that scrolling down on the website, you shall see a link to the social pinpoint site, both in English and in Spanish. And we'd like for you to submit comments, participate in the survey. But one area in particular we'd like for you to participate in is in the map. As Alan had mentioned earlier in the presentation, as part of the social pinpoint map is the ability to be able to place a pin geographically on the map and tell us your challenge, your constraint, your experience in traveling in North County, and what are ways that you would like to see improvements take place. You can place it as an opportunity as well and see an opportunity for projects or improvements in that space to be able to improve, whether that's your commute to work, your commute or your ability to travel to school, whether that's a student or scholar drop-off, the ability to be able to run errands or just go to activities within North County. We'd like for you to be able to share your thoughts here. That information is being integrated into the CMCP. It is informing how projects are being developed, how they can be bundled, and move forward into opportunities for implementation. With that plug, we'll now proceed into the CMCP framework. And I'd like to hand it off to Alan Kossip again.
Thank you, Edgar. You know, one of the things I always worry about when we do these meetings is that it sounds a little wonky, right? In terms of the planning and the terminology, and some of these analysis approaches probably only something only an engineer and a planner can love. But I really do believe strongly in this comprehensive approach towards planning, system planning. And so I think we asked to add this slide just to kind of make the linkage to something where it's working, right? And folks may not recognize, but the improvements that you're seeing out on I-5 right now are a result of that comprehensive planning approach. And so you see construction projects right now that are doing both rail, double tracking, building carpool lanes, and adding bike paths all under one project and one environmental document, sort of one comprehensive approach, just like we want to do on 78. So we've seen it work. In fact, I think it was just last week where NCTD approved additional frequency of coaster trains on the line, on the Lausanne line, and that was part of that overall planning. So it isn't planning just infrastructure, it's planning services as well. So just a plug for, this approach. The North County corridor was really one of the first in the state to take it on. It was what we call first generation. We learned a lot, and we're anxious to put that to work in the North County corridor. Next slide, back to you, Edgar.
Thank you, Alan. And Alan mentioned using a data-driven approach. In this case, on this slide, you'll see two maps that are based on anonymous trip data. And the map on the left shows the weekday daily trip pattern. This is a 24-hour window into how people travel in North County. And on the right is the morning trip from North County to the surrounding areas. A couple of things to orient yourself. So on the map on the left, you'll see a blue outline for the North County study area. And then you'll see on the upper left-hand side, Orange County. And the fact that North County is connected to the North County travel shed, as well as Riverside County, East County, and the Imperial County area, I-15 corridor and the communities from northern San Diego, Poway, all the way down to Interstate 8. Coastal San Diego, effectively Encinitas South, again to Interstate 8, and then southern San Diego County. And what these numbers start to highlight is, well, where are people traveling to and from? And a few takeaways here. First is on the left-hand side, you'll see that North County is able to capture 82% of the trips that start in North County. And so that means that that North County travelers are looking to stay local, stay within North County, stay within the subregion, focused with travels to and from communities. But there are these connections that North County has with the greater region. And I don't mean just San Diego, I also mean Southern California, where these connections to Orange County, Riverside, and coastal San Diego are strong. And you'll notice on the map, there are these colors, red and green, that show the top routes or the top path choices that people make when wanting to travel to and from North County. And that highlights the importance of those gateways into the North County communities. Now, note, this is not like Google Maps where the red and green designate congestion. In this case, it highlights the propensity for someone to choose that path to get into and from North County. On the map on the right, the morning trip, this would be a close reflection to morning commutes, especially for those who live in North County. And so in this case, we'll see that North County takes a smaller percentage of the trips at 77%. It's still a very large percentage, which means that if you live in North County, you typically work or do activities within North County, especially in the morning period. But however, we do see that coastal San Diego, effectively along the coastal alignment and Interstate 5, is 10%, which means that that relationship to North County is very strong. We also see that the share for the I-15 corridor increases to 5%. And it highlights the importance of the I-15 corridor and its connection to North County. So we are looking at how general trip patterns work and what that means in terms of developing a framework for solutions. But it's not just staying at this high level that is important. We also continue into more detailed analysis on a case-by-case basis. In this example, we're looking at top routes to work where the Carlsbad and Vista job centers are the focus of the analysis. We do this for various types of markets, different employers, communities of concern, and be able to look at where are people choosing to travel to and from. And it highlights the top paths or top routes in which they are trying to access that job, that activity center, the school. And so we look at these as opportunities to see how people choose to travel to and from those key destinations. As I highlighted before, this isn't like Google Maps. This is top or propensity, a heat map of how people choose to travel. And I'll hand off to Kareem to talk about our mobility framework.
Thank you, Edgar. We are proposing a three-pronged approach to accomplish the study objectives. Now, this three-pronged approach, consists of one, mobility hubs or mobility boulevards, and these mobility zones are basically are areas with several key destinations and have a high concentration of activity. Their areas also align with the city's general plans to support locally driven solutions. And next, we have mobility boulevards, which are major arterials that connect communities to areas of activity and destinations, as well as to the corridors that connect people to the surrounding region. And then finally, we have the regional spines. And these are the corridors that connect the study area to the surrounding region. And the regional spines are, for example, would be SR 78, or 76, as well as 5 and 15, and the Sprinter line within this corridor. Next slide. So this slide provides a layered conceptual schematic of how this mobility framework could be applied in this study area. Beginning with the locations of the mobility hubs or zones. Next would be the mobility boulevards. And then finally, the regional spines.
With regards to mobility hubs and zones, and one thing to take note is that the mobility hub zones is not intended to be just a singular point, or for example, just a transit station or the Sprinter station in the case of North County. It's intended to be a mobility zone where there is a concentration of activity. So that concentration of activity allows for different choices and mobility options in that space, whether that's walking, biking, rideshare, or other mobility services within that zone. It's intended to reflect local city decisions, the general plans, and how the cities are wanting to not only develop, but support the travel needs of their citizens. These zones are for connectivity with different travel options for walking, biking, and transit. It provides an integrated suite of mobility. It's intended to all work together in that space. So again, that zone is could be a mile in square mile, or it could be a couple of square miles, but it's intended to be, again, mobility services where you're able to freely and easily move within that space, in that community, in that mobility area seamlessly. And as I mentioned, the hub can be 1, 2, or a few miles to provide that on-demand travel choice. And it depends on what is needed for that mobility hub.
All right, so mobility boulevards. Mobility boulevards are high volume corridors that are key to moving people between communities and activities within North County. They'll be supporting future North County mobility and goods movement needs. They connect people to regional spines, freeways and transit corridors, to regionally significant activity centers for North County and the surrounding communities. Ideally, they'll provide transportation choices that can improve how people travel in the region. And what they're not downtown main streets or highways.
Thanks, Brian. One of the things I think is important with the planning process is that folks understand, and we kind of talked about it early on, right, that the planning process is a continuous process. And even though we wrap up this CMCP and the RTP has made a lot of great decisions and direction, as we continue to look forward 3 or 4 years from now, we do all this again, right? And we kind of see, are we on the right path? And we sort of true up how things have changed versus how do we think they were going to change, and how do we react to that? And the important thing is that during that, projects come out of that, right? And projects come out of the last planning process that we've done. And so what you're doing is you're doing project implementation and project planning simultaneously. And this slide is just meant to, inform on that, right? And so despite the fact we're doing this planning process, we're already as a region and as Caltrans working on the projects such as 578 environmental document, right? Getting that to a place where we can design and construct. 1578, how do we get the managed lanes from 15 over to 78? How do we clean up that operational problem there? We see congestion on the freeway spills into the I-15 express lanes and really degrades the operations of those express lanes and really hinders the BRT system in that corridor. So we're already working on those projects. So we just wanted to make sure folks folks understood that. Next slide.
We're ready for Q&A, and we're also going to be preparing to retake the poll on challenges. We know that was limited to one choice, so we'd like to re-administer that at some point during the Q&A. And so please be prepared for that. We have a few questions, and we'll pull those up and be ready to share them. And we'll have the first one is regards to the 2021 regional plan, and specifically one of the appendices that addresses equity, along with an attachment of list of programs and regional plan projects, by community. And I believe that's attachment 3 of the regional plan. Will these projects and programs be given priority in this North County CMCP? And I'll hand that off to Alan.
Sorry, Edgar. Operator error. I mean, in terms of priority, I think that's really what we're looking at here in the CMCP, is really looking at where are the greatest needs, where are the greatest opportunities. And I think, that really is the purpose of this. I think, as you saw from the objectives and the values, those underserved communities are very important at all levels. And I think a lot of the improvements that we're looking at are really focused in that area. So I think the answer is yes. As we get to fall of this year, that's when we'll be coming back to the public and really sharing the mix of projects that this study is going to recommend.
Excellent. Thank you, Alan. We have another question with regards to the employment areas that were shown by Kareem during the CMCP or during the corridor overview, that they did not appear to take Camp Pendleton into consideration. Camp Pendleton is an employer and generator of trips. Is that taken into account in the CMCP? And I'll hand this off to Brian. I'll note, to Kareem. I'll note that Camp Pendleton does send a representative to the stakeholder group meetings, and they are incorporated as part of the origin destination analysis, but I'll hand that off to Kareem or Alan.
Kareem might be having connection problems, so I'll take that one, Edgar. Yes, and I think the challenge probably with Camp Pendleton is it's not a point, and it's really 5 or 6 gates. And so the Camp Pendleton is clearly part of our analysis, and the trips, as a major destination, we're studying that those flows, whether it be through 76 or transit, however they get to those gates that are within this shed. So sometimes the employment as Camp Pendleton is greater than the number actually using those particular gates in the shed, but yes, they are definitely included in the analysis.
Excellent. Well, it appears that we have our poll ready for challenges again. If the participants will indulge our CMCP team, what is most important to you for improving transportation in North County? And you can select as many as you like. It is multiple choice. Expand travel options competitive to driving a car. Provide more travel options for short trips, in this case, less than 5 miles. Enhance, maintain local community character. Improve overall travel safety. Improve the environment and air quality. Decrease congestion. Better connection to jobs and schools. Prepare for future technology, and other. And if there's other, please post it in the Q&A. Excellent. We'll allow to open because we know there's multiple choice here, so we'll allow this to run a little bit longer for responses to come in. Let's give it a few more seconds here. If you don't mind submitting, and we shall end the poll here shortly. So we have a few that came up. So expanding travel options compared to driving a car still came up with 2/3 of the respondents, or close to 2/3. But we also have others, decreasing congestion and better connection to jobs and schools. And while there's others there, those three did come up often in the listening tour, both with technical working group and city staff, as well as the survey that was submitted. And we, again, shameless plug for our CMCP engagement. Please go to the Social Pinpoint site and participate in the survey, provide general comment, and those pins on the map. All right, so thank you for humoring us and participating in that poll. For our next question, with the advance of telecommuting during COVID and its proven viability, perhaps with a hybrid approach, where some days are work from home and others are with aggressive workplace, does SANDAG and Caltrans see any opportunities to promote this option to employers? Could it be a way to reduce congestion? And I'll hand that off to Brian and Elisa to respond.
Yeah, thanks. I was going to give it a start, and Lisa, if you want to fill in any gaps I miss, I'll appreciate it. But yeah, SANDAG, first, we have a iCommute team. It's a branch of our agency that deals explicitly with that. So, pre-COVID, they were always trying to reach out to employers and get folks to find alternative options to driving alone, whether it's carpooling, vanpooling, and even telecommuting. And that was an important part of their work. So trying to offer resources to employers. So they've realized that telecommuting's a thing now and will be a thing in the future. So that's a big part of what they do. And another thing I was just thinking of as I saw this question, we had this question in another meeting earlier this morning, is how are we dealing with the way we look at our planning with telecommuting on the rise, and how do we take that into account? And we have changed the way we look at how we project into the future, how many folks we think will telecommute. And in the past plans, that number was an X%, and we've increased that percent a little bit to assume that more people will be telecommuting in the future. But we're in kind of a wait and see pattern with that to see maybe in a year from now or 2 years from now, based on surveys that we do and census data that we start getting, how many more people are still telecommuting. And our iCommute group actually does a lot of outreach to other big businesses around the county and did a lot of great surveying of them to ask how many of their employees are telecommuting and how many do they think will be telecommuting. And I believe we even had a great presentation at a SANDAG board meeting a couple months ago that explicitly talked about telecommuting.
Yes, I would add also that SANDAG is also working on issues of digital divide, because not all communities have good broadband internet access. And it applies to telework, it applies to telehealth, it applies to education. We're seeing, as the data that Alan showed earlier also, that despite the increase in telework, the amount of travel really is almost up to pre-pandemic levels. So it'll be interesting to see maybe in the fall, when schools are back in session, K through 12, universities, how the volume of travel increases or not. But definitely telework is an option that is being encouraged. And it can help with the morning rush hour or the evening rush hour. We see that people who telework also have to make trips during the day. So they may be shifting those trips to other times, but it can definitely be a strategy to help with the most congested times of travel.
Thank you, Brian and Elisa. So we have another question with regards to the data presented as part of this evening's presentation shows current trip data. How does the team factor in the lack of convenient transit options for communities of concern? Without convenient transit to school work, current transit options do not benefit those communities. And for that one, I will hand off to Brian again, and I will follow up with some of the data analysis.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things, and we've talked about this with the regional plan, is we know the existing transit system doesn't work great for a lot of people. And it shows with pre-COVID, our ridership numbers. And what we've also found out is that transit system actually doesn't do great for our areas of communities of concern. So I didn't show it in my slides about the regional plan, but we have them in our analysis in the regional plan. It's especially one of our appendices. We talk about a social equity and how we're trying to reach communities of concern with the planning we do, and then with the proposed system that we have in the plan, how many more folks in these communities get better transit. So it's always on the top of our mind, and it's social equity is key to how we consider each project as we move forward.
And as Kareem had mentioned earlier, especially in one of the goals, in providing choices tailored to need, that goal does reflect how to be able to adapt, adjust, and provide transit options tailored to the needs of those communities of concern, especially when you talk about some of the challenges that they have with accessing transit, not just the frequencies. So in terms of our analysis, we do look at not only how they travel, but what are those impediments to travel? What are those barriers? And again, this is the importance of having your input and their input. We're working with the community-based organizations along with the city partners to get their input as to where those challenges are, what they experience to get to the transit service, and then be able to then provide the transit services that travel to their destinations. And that starts with, again, service span and frequency. Our next question, has SANDAG or NCTD considered another branch of the Sprinter running north-south or along another alignment along with double tracking? And for that, I will hand it off to Brian as well, because I believe that's tied to the regional plan.
Yeah, so working with NCTD, we've had in our plan for a long time a branch from Escondido going south to the Westfield North County Mall. That's expected to be built not for a while, likely I think 2050 in our plan. So that might take a while. The double tracking is very important because that'll help allow more trains per hour. Right now there's 2 trains per hour, and they hope to go, NCTD hopes to move that up to 4 trains per hour as soon as they get enough double tracking in there. And then in terms of considering other branches, we did look at the data with the regional plan. And I think we felt that next generation rapids were the better solution for a lot of these corridors, especially as we've seen some of the data and seeing that there's not a lot of super dense areas in this region that would call for more light rail being built.
We have a follow-up question, and that is, will the Sprinter line be electrified? For those who may not know, they're currently diesel motorized units. And so the question is related to that propulsion. Brian?
So NCTD is exploring new technology for both the coaster and the Sprinter. Electrification may not be the choice that they go towards. Zero emission vehicles is their goal, and that's a state mandate to start moving towards that. So whether it's hydrogen based or some other technology, it could be electrical. Problem with electrification is, there's freight running along that line, so adding the wires above causes problems. But I think we're all looking forward to new solutions in the near future that include zero emission based type vehicles, whether it's hydrogen or battery electric or other things that don't cause you to need like a third rail or those wires above.
All right, we have, so we have another follow-up question. Please expand on next-gen rapid and its importance to improve transportation options. In other words, how specifically will next-gen rapid be made rapid in contrast to current services? And to clarify, current rapid bus services.
So yeah, great question. A couple of our rapid routes do have some, what we call them, guideway treatments that allow for the buses to have their own lane. We have the South Bay Rapid down in Otay Mesa that comes up onto the Palomar and then over to the 805 into downtown. Along Palomar, the city working with us down there has built lanes that the rapids can travel in by themselves. That helps the speed a lot. It's a great priority treatment for them. Along El Cajon Boulevard in the city of San Diego, the city painted a few miles of roadway there to make it for transit and bicycles only. So that also helps. So it's these types of things that we're looking towards to speed up transit. In the future, as part of the 5 big moves, we'd be looking to having smart technology that would allow buses to move through signals or not have to queue up at signals with other traffic. They'd get priority through there, or maybe even with managed lanes, even on roads that allow for priority for transit. So whether it's high occupancy vehicles in transit or some other things, with smart technology, there'd be signs that would say, this lane at this hour is only for transit and HOVs, and would allow transit to move through that congested area. And then when that street's not busy later in the day or during the middle of the day, that street could go back to regular traffic and not have be sitting empty while buses aren't going through at that time of the day. So it's all those types of things, looking to make rapid, next-gen rapid, much faster than it is today. And the hope is to ideally make it as fast or faster than the average speeds for a car who's sitting in the regular traffic with everyone else.
To expand on Brian's response, the next-gen rapids are an integral component to the mobility boulevards, especially where those corridors align not only with what was identified under the regional plan, but also under NCTD's strategic master plan. And so that is where we are looking for those opportunities for mobility choices along those mobility boulevards, which are effectively the key arterials within. And there is.
And then, sorry, Edgar, yeah, in the regional plan and working with North County Transit District, and then as we work into the CMCP, we're trying to think of which corridors would actually get exclusive rapid guideway. We initially were thinking probably along Palomar Airport Road and San Marcos Boulevard between Carlsbad and the 78. That'd probably be a good area to achieve that. But I think with the CMCP work, I've already started seeing likely a few more areas where we could add rapid lines, and then we would work on that to see does that corridor, does that mobility corridor necessitate needing exclusive guideway, or can we do it through other means? So it's something we'll look at, but it's definitely probably a few corridors in this region would require exclusive.
Thanks, Brian. And that was for everyone a follow-up as to the exclusive bus roadways looked at within. All right, please feel free to post more questions. We are here to be able to answer them. So if you have any thoughts, again, questions, or if you'd like to utilize this time, I'm going to make a plug for that map again on Social Pinpoint. Please provide your input as to the challenges that you're experiencing or someone that you know experience. Again, we understand that not everyone has the luxury of time to be able to provide that input, but we very much value it in any way possible, whether it's through the survey, general comments, or the map, and especially tonight for those of you who are attending this virtual meeting. I can honestly say that those map pins are valuable to our input for our development, and then sharing of those solutions that you put forward, as well as integrating them into larger solution sets. All right. So we have another one, a question here. Since SANDAG input is from elected officials, how do we get more transit when many of the reps in North County want wider freeways? So for this, I'll hand off to Alan and Brian. So again, there are multiple avenues of input, not just elected officials. It is one of the primary reasons for having our virtual engagement hub and meetings like this evening. And it's being able to provide, again, that opportunity for you, for those in your community, in your social network, in your work network, to be able to provide that meaningful feedback. Alan?
Thanks, Edgar. And I would also sort of go back to your foundational statements about data-driven plan, and that first step of the CMCP is really thinking about the characteristics of the corridor and where are people going, where do they come from in terms of even land use and density, and what's the propensity for usages of certain types of solutions, right? And so, given some of the topography, given some of the land use, certain types of solutions probably may not be really effective in the corridor. And I think that's where we're headed now, is to do that analysis to make that best match. Some of the things that we're seeing is a lot of connectivity between communities. We talk about one of the statements we heard in the surveys is that people see themselves as a citizen of North County as much as they see themselves as a citizen of San Marcos Vista. And probably that's, they're doing a lot of movement in North County. They're moving from San Marcos to Vista, traveling daily. So they're relatively shorter trips. They're like the 3 to 8 mile trips, but they may also be in a sort of a spider web approach. And based on that, some of the things we're seeing, flexible fleets would be a really good solution. So that's the work right now. Brian, you want to build on that, or Lisa?
Sure. And you will see, the draft regional plan includes quite a bit of transit service in North County, and that transit service is going to be considered in this particular corridor plan also. So you will see that there are many transit options that are being proposed, whether it's through the Sprinter or rapid second generation bus rapid transits, and also the coaster. The Lausanne corridor also is going to receive quite a few improvements over time in terms of increased frequencies and more trips per day. So you'll see a good mix of transit projects, both in the draft plan and in the corridor plan.
Thank you, Elisa and Alan. We have a follow-up question. What about California voter-approved high-speed rail? And how is that going to be integrated into the CMCP?
So I'm not sure for the CMCP, for the regional plan, since we know that the state hasn't identified an alignment that comes down into San Diego at this point. We've included it just as like a dotted line on our maps to show that if it does come, and it probably wouldn't come until way after 2050, which is outside the scope of our plan, that we'd consider it, and then it's really more likely in probably 10 or 15 years from now, once the state, if they do start finding funding for the San Diego part of that system, that we would then start really attaching that into our plan and seeing how we would connect to it. Ideally it would connect to some of the systems we already have, like the Sprinter or other train lines that we have in the region. But at this point, we're kind of sitting back and waiting and seeing what the state does.
Thank you, Brian. Let's see, any other questions, comments? We'll continue to leave it open there. There were additional comments, I believe you'd be able to read it, that in disadvantaged communities, the ability to telecommute would be enhanced by widened internet broadband, as Elisa had mentioned earlier, and speaking to that being an element of equity. Great, it appears that we have at least answered the questions for this evening. Please, if you have additional questions as they come along, please post them. There are multiple mechanisms by which you can share your thoughts, and I will go ahead and bring those up now. Or actually, I'll first speak to, or allow Alan to speak to the timeline.
Thank you, Edgar. And as Edgar pointed out, I mean, we consider this a continuous engagement. So any ideas, any questions all along the way, don't wait for these touch points like tonight. And although there will be additional touch points, and as we kind of talked about the process to do the CMCP, as we we've over the last few months, we've really delved into the characteristics and the propensity and really understand where people are moving and what they need. Now we're moving into what are the solutions, what are the projects, and then we're going to bundle those together, right? So what makes sense to fit together? A smart arterial plus a rapid bus. How do you can't have one without the other. So let's put those together. Sometimes facilities provide opportunities for other projects that may not be very cost effective or even feasible without sort of marrying them with a second project. And so that's really the work through summer. And then, as I mentioned, in late summer, fall, we'll be back in this sort of format to sort of talk about those bundles and what we've seen. And we'll take those bundles and then develop performance outputs from them. So we'll be able to communicate, how have we improved frequency? How have we improved travel times for people? What's the remaining congestion and delay, and how does safety improve? So really, later this year, that's the information you'll have. And then we'll wrap this up by the end of this year, this calendar year. Next slide. As Edgar pointed out, there's a number of places where you can reach us. And this is just sort of a handful of those, but as I said, please give us a call or email us or text us. Edgar.
Thank you, Alan. And that concludes this evening's meeting. On behalf of SANDAG, Caltrans, and the CMCP team, thank you so much for your time this evening and participating in our virtual event for the North County CMCP. Again, if you have any questions, comments, thoughts, please feel free to utilize any of these methods to communicate with us and with the larger team. Thank you so much.